Hey, JinJa.
Hey, Esther.
How's it going?
It's going awesome. We're in the Hollingsworth farm in Renton, Washington, and we are on a whirlwind tour here of this part of the country. We just left Vancouver. We were on Victoria Island, and then we drove about 3.5 to 4 hours last night in the pitch black highways of Washington to get to Renton so we can be here at the Hollingsworth farm, which is one of the only in the United States of America black-owned cannabis farms. I'm JinJa Birkenbeuel.
And I'm Esther Ikoro, and we're the hosts of the Honest Field Guide podcast.
Entrepreneurship is no joke. The journey is full of anticipation, failure, hope, and disappointment. You'll make money and be totally broke at the same time.
The Honest Field Guide podcast tells you the truth.
We know being an entrepreneur is crazy hard, and you will sometimes cry at dinner. Listen in to be inspired, laugh, and learn how to really thrive on your business journey.
There are places I would be and the faces I would see. One day it'll come and I'll be free.
Joy Hollingsworth is in her 6th year as a Chief Operating Officer of Hollingsworth Farm. She has created numerous innovative processing techniques to maximize company efficiency. She is also in charge of branding, marketing, logistics, and creative development. Her love and appreciation of cannabis began when she firsthand saw how the plant provided immediate long-term relief to her disabled mother, aging grandmother, and paraplegic uncle. After a stellar high school sports career, Joy continued to earn honors as a collegiate student athlete of the University of Arizona women's basketball team, where she graduated in 2007. She went on to play professionally in Athens, Greece, and earned her master's degree in education from the University of Washington. She worked as an assistant women's basketball coach at Seattle University until joining her brother in the cannabis industry. Wow. Joy Hollingsworth. I have been looking for this company for the last year because in Illinois, we don't have legal cannabis, but we will starting January 1st. And so I've been wondering, all the people that have licenses or that are applying for licenses in our state are, first of all, not African American, and they're definitely not women. So I thought, you know what? We need to go on a journey and on an epic mission to find out what Black person is really in the supply chain, the wealth generating, self-determination space of cannabis. And here we are with Joy Hollingsworth, which is absolutely astonishing because, she's got this amazing t-shirt on that says plant. She's got
Yay.
the cutest hoop earrings, and we're in her office, their distribution warehouse. So welcome, Joy.
Thank you so much, Esther and JinJa. I'm so excited to be here. We're at our distribution center in Renton, Washington, where we manufacture all of our hemp CBD products. And our farm is in Shelton, which is 90 minutes outside of Seattle. So I'm super happy to be here, super happy to sit in with some queens of color. It's amazing.
So, first of all, we have to give some credit. So I found you because there's a woman in Illinois that works in the cannabis industry. Can you talk a little bit about her? Because I reached out to her and I said, hey, do you know any Black women in cannabis? And she did.
Yeah, it's crazy. Lisbeth found us via the internet, and she hit us up and said that she was doing this amazing marketing, CannaU marketing online, and asked if we could do an interview to talk about different things in the cannabis industry, what we go through as people of color, especially female people of color. And so we talked about that and gave probably a 20-minute interview about how to get into the cannabis industry and touching the plant. So actually being on the farm, the soil, the plant, all that branding.
Lisbeth is from Illinois. So her company is called Canna Marketing U. It's Lisbeth Vargas, and she's actually a strategist and founder of this company. And what do you know about her? So she works in the cannabis industry. She's a woman as well.
Absolutely. Female of color, put on this event, was very strategic about promoting people of color in the industry. You don't see that a lot when you have a lot of these conferences and a lot of these, different meetings and so forth. And so she was very strategic about intentionally getting those people in the industry, especially women of color, to be able to give advice to people, talk about what they're doing, because everyone wants to get into this green rush of cannabis. And you see a lot of people of color, Black folks especially, and they want to get into the industry to help create generational wealth for their families and their generation. So she was very instrumental about getting me on board, and they had a great turnout. It was amazing. It was all online because a lot of times logistically people can't get to certain places. So doing it online, I believe that's one of the first of its kind for people to have access to that amount of speakers, that amount of information. So it was dope.
That is great that there is a budding community of people of color, especially with an emphasis on women, trying to figure out how to build generational wealth through this green rush, you
Right.
said. I've never heard it referred to that way, but it makes absolute sense because this industry is really in a sweet spot right now.
Right.
And so people who are jumping in are having an opportunity to get here before the barriers of entry go up. So can you just tell us a little bit about how a Black family comes to own a cannabis company?
Crazy. Okay, so 2012, 3 things happened. Legalization of cannabis in Washington State, which is called I-502. The second part was Barack Obama got reelected. And the third piece was legalization of gay marriage. I'm queer, so I loved all 3. We're Black, we love Barack Obama. And, my parents have been involved in cannabis recreationally for a minute. That was the first person I smoked cannabis with was my mother at the age of 22. And so my brother sat down with me. He said, hey, we want to get into the cannabis industry. He was already in the medical market. We sat down as a family. We all decided, we prayed over it. We all decided that, hey, this is something we want to do. I was still very nervous about it, but there was a point of no return. The point of no return is when we purchased the land. When we purchased the land, we knew we had to own the land. We had to own whatever we were on, because ownership, having your own land, being able to pass that down, that's one of the things in life that continues to appreciate over time. And so we bought the land. That was point of no return. And I said, hey, Raph, I'm all on board. And that was back in 2014 as when we put our first plant in the ground. We were the first licensed recreational legal cannabis farm in the country, Black owned. And so we put that plant in the ground, and back in 2015, we had our first sale for cannabis in the state of Washington.
Wow, there is a lot that we have to go
Lord
back.
have mercy. Where do we start?
That I can put a pin in right there. First of all, the first time you smoked was with your mom,
Right.
which is getting less and less taboo, because when I sit back and I think about the way that cannabis is being used from a medicinal perspective, it becomes less of a taboo topic. But can you give me some context around how that happened when you were 22?
So I used to play basketball and played basketball in college, and I wasn't allowed to have cannabis, and I was considered probably a square. People didn't, it was like I was scared. First time I saw weed was actually when I was in middle school, and I thought it was some herbs. I was like, oh, that looks like some nice oregano. I didn't know. But then moving forward, I experienced it because my mom said, hey, I've been waiting for this moment my whole life, and I want you to try this. I smoked some of her stuff. I fell to the ground, never felt that sensation before, and she told me to get my butt up because that was only one hit. And my first introduction was her smoking, and she uses it for scoliosis. She has really bad scoliosis, and she uses it to manage her pain. And a lot of the first introduction for our family in cannabis was all medical. So my grandmother, who's 99, uses it every day. My mother has scoliosis really bad. And then my uncle, who's paralyzed from the neck down, he uses cannabis, That's how we launched our CBD hemp brand, because my aunt got into the medical. She's from the executive industry with Boeing. She's been retired for years, and she got into it to help replace a couple of prescription drugs for his being paraplegic.
Wow, that is a really amazing origin story. And I've found more and more, and we found more and more through our research, that a lot of people first are introduced to cannabis from the medical perspective.
Right.
But I want to go back and talk a little bit about this idea of sitting down with your entire family, because it's one thing to say, okay, I've got inspiration from this origin story that I have a familial connection with. I'm going to start a business around it. But what was the inspiration for saying we're doing this collectively as a family together?
Yeah, well, the thing is we knew that we could not do this alone. Raph knew that if we did this, we had to do this as a family. And a lot of the inspiration for our family, because people said, oh, did you guys start back in 2013? I always bring it back to my grandmother, who was born in South Carolina, 1920. She was born on the same farm as her ancestors were slaves. So her family were slaves on that same farm she was born on. She was born in the South, went to Payne College. She was the first Black female to graduate from the University of Washington School of Social Work. She sat on the school board, Seattle, Washington. So it was like, that was our inspiration, because I feel like knowing your history reveals your potential greatness. And she taught us that from an early age. And going back to that, knowing that, if she could be the first Black to do so many things, why not us? Why can't we be the first Black to do certain things? And so that was our inspiration for sure.
Tell me how your brother is involved in the company, because you said he was already in the medical growing space.
Right.
And so is he the bio and science brain? Because I see a lot of innovation going on when I look at your website, when I explore your company. It seems very science-based, very tech-based. So who's the nerd, and what is the approach to that process?
Oh, absolutely. Raf's the nerd. So Raf's for sure the nerd. He's always been super, super smart. In fact, a quick fact about him that a lot of people don't know, that he could have skipped high school and went straight to college because he was so smart. He scored higher on an SAT than I did when I was in my senior year of high school, when he did in 6th grade. So he's like super, super smart. There's always stuff flowing through his head. And so he was the inspiration behind it. He was in the medical field in Seattle for a long time, growing underground in Seattle. You saw a lot of Black growers growing underground and into the medical industry. That was the medical market, a lot of Black growers. And so Raf was in that mix, and he was doing that. And so when this opportunity came to become legal, that's when he said, okay, this is our opportunity to be able to do that. And so he's the brains behind that piece. He does all the growing outside. He does all the big vision. I'm the operations person. I'm doing everything from A, B, C, D, making sure stuff gets done, making sure the branding's on point, making sure logistically what stuff looks like, making sure whatever dream he has potentially can come through with the operations piece. So we have a good connection with each other, just because it's a great balance. But sometimes we fight, and I quit every day or get fired, but that's what family business is.
Yeah, and that's really interesting, because I know a lot of people start businesses at their kitchen table, especially with the small business owners that we talk with, and they sometimes end up pulling in either close friends or members of their family. Did you always know that you were going to be on the operations side of things? How did you end up divvying up the work to make it functional for your dynamic?
We just kind of flowed into that scene. When we first started, it was all hands on deck. So I was outside watering plants. We were all trimming. It was a group effort, all hands on deck. Didn't matter. And then as we continued to find our niche in the market and morphed as a company, then it was very, very different. And so I kind of slide into this operations piece. Raf kind of did everything outside. That's what he was really, really good at. And then my dad, he did all the sales. So imagine a 65-year-old going around to all these dispensaries in Washington State with his cane talking about, I got that loud. And everyone, they listened to him because they were like, who's this Black guy, 65, talking about he guys, some loud. So we coached him into how to talk to people and connect with all the buyers.
I'm kind of curious about something. Just to level set, I don't smoke marijuana. I have no context around cannabis at all. That's a word that I just learned, a few years ago. Everyone's laughing, but it's true. On the other hand, Esther,
okay,
my co-host.
I'm sorry.
No, you can laugh if you want. I
knew you were going to say on the other hand I knew it. I'm like, she's going to say on the other hand.
You can laugh, but, Esther, on the other hand, is slightly different. She's first of all, she's younger than me, and she has a different appreciation for cannabis than I do. So what I want to ask you is, because you're talking about a generation and generations of cannabis users, I'm not really clear on the timeline. So, cannabis is becoming, legalized all over the country.
Right.
You were involved in it before it was legal?
No, actually, no. I didn't get involved until Raf said, hey, this is what we want to do. So I'm fairly new to the industry as well.
Okay, so then that's good to know. So what I'm wondering is, there's certain people in the United States that, like me, are not involved in cannabis, and their whole lives have been against cannabis.
Right.
And then there's other people that are saying, no, weed should be for everyone. It's beautiful. It should all be legal. So how do you have a conversation now with people that are very resistant to legalize marijuana to the movement that's happening in the United States right now, where every state's, about to make marijuana legal?
Yeah, that's a good question. Okay, so when we first came out, I was very hesitant because a lot of people were so against cannabis. And as we slowly got, and especially in Washington State, as we slowly morphed into legalization and it kind of the market developed and had its own brain and mind, literally the first people that were really connected to our hemp CBD and cream or any topicals were people that we went to church with. And it was a lot of older people, like around my grandmother's age, people like my parents. They see consuming cannabis as putting it on a lot of topicals. And so to them, they're not smoking weed, they're not doing oil, but they're still consuming cannabis in some form or fashion. And so that's why you see a lot of topicals, because that's like the first entry to cannabis is, I use it for the ointment. Then the next stage is, I ate an edible, or I had some gummies. And the next stage is, I had some oil and the oil was good. And, so as this conversation continues to change, I think a lot of people are understanding that some pharmaceutical drugs are not good for them and it's hurting them. I've seen my mom use a lot of prescription drugs and replace those with cannabis, oil, just natural remedies. I mean, this is a plant that comes out of the ground and we grow it with our hands. And I've seen it firsthand help people. And so as this conversation continues to go and people are, exploring plant living, plant lifestyle, plant-based diet, or whether that's, cannabis in some form on a topical or consuming it with the edible, I think we're going to see a massive shift in the country where people are moving towards that.
So leading up to that, given that you and your family are you the only Black-owned cannabis farmer in the country, or are there others? We're
not the only. We know most of them. Okay. There are a lot of hemp companies popping up east of the Mississippi, which is amazing, which we're so happy about, that are growing hemp. But, there are some, that we know of and that we've connected with, but I can literally count them on my hand. And that's because the barriers of entry are so high to get into the industry for people of color. And so that's something that people struggle with. I tell people all the time, our story is very different than others. The stars really align to get where we are. And we're happy about that and proud about that. But we know that because we were one of the first, that we have a responsibility to hold ourselves at a higher standard than others, to be able to set an example for others to inspire to get into the industry.
So when you talk about responsibility, are you moving towards having conversations around advocacy at a political level, at a national level, or what's your involvement in a space like that?
Yeah, when we first started, we were just trying to get established. We were trying to just, figure out what the heck we're doing. And then after we have kind of got our feet settled and we're continuing to grow the brand, now we're talking about that advocacy piece and that social equity and that restorative justice piece. But that takes time. And so right now we're still trying to figure out, it's a delicate balance, how to still be profitable, how to still make money to be able to fund that advocacy work, because we know a lot of that advocacy work, it's not a monetary value money in that, but you have to find something to be able to continue to fund that. And so that's why we're trying to figure out what that looks like with giving back, to the community, college scholarships. That's kind of our angle, just because our grandmother was so heavy influence with us about education and knowing that helps create different lives for people. And then also too, a big thing is entrepreneurship. We're huge on that. Getting more people of color into the industry, whether it not be, maybe they don't touch the plant, maybe it's a technology company, maybe they learn about how to packaging, maybe they're a lawyer, maybe they're figuring out the legal side of it, or logistics. You don't have to touch the plant to be in the industry. And so we're trying to expose more of those avenues for people who want to be involved, don't know how, maybe don't want to grow and don't care about that, but want to figure out the logistics behind getting the cannabis to the consumer.
So on the advocacy side that you're talking about, are you primarily focused on African American or women, or is it advocacy in general with the cannabis conversation in the United States?
No, it's predominantly Black folks, women as well. I'm passionate about women because I'm female, but Black people for sure.
I really like that you mentioned that you don't have to touch the plant to be involved in the industry, because it rings a bell for me as far as supply chain goes. So how do you approach plugging yourself into the supply chains of other companies? Are all of your products consumer facing? What does the wholesale side of your business look like, and how do you share that information with small business owners?
Yeah, so the biggest thing that we've learned during the cannabis industry is that everyone that have reached out to us have said, hey, I have land, or I want to have a store, or I want to do this, this, and this. And the biggest thing, we tell them the first thing is local government. What is your local government doing currently? Figure out what those laws, because people think that, oh, the president can shut you down, or no, your local government can shut you down immediately. Okay, so that's the first thing people need to do. What their local government's doing, what are the cannabis laws, what does that look like? And then you have to realize what each state is doing. So for example, in Colorado, you can be vertically integrated. So that means that you can sell direct to consumer. You can grow it, you can process it, you can have a store, and you can sell it direct to consumer. In Washington State, we're set up a little bit differently. You cannot be vertically integrated. We have a producer processor license. We're not allowed to have and own and operate a store to get direct to consumer. So because that's set up like that, you have a disconnect, or that gap in between a producer processor and then getting out to stores. So what that means are there are a lot of businesses in our industry in 502 that are maybe a delivery service, maybe they're a marketing service, or maybe they are the maybe they do sales. It's very different in each state. California is set up similarly the same way. You can be vertically integrated, but they also have different licenses where you could just be distribution, where you could just be a retail. Maybe you just want to do delivery, where you don't have all those upfront costs and you can just do delivery. It really depends on each state. Every state is not the same. So wherever you're at, you have to figure out what those local laws are first to be able to figure out how you can tap into the industry and what your best fit in your niche is.
So on the topic of upfront costs, that's a huge barrier to entry for a lot of people. There's a lot of equipment, there's land, there's supplies, there's licensing, and all these hoops to jump through. Is your farm completely funded through your family, or are you involved with any sort of VC, any sort of venture capital or?
Right. No. So we took all of our dad's retirement, we pried it from his hands, and we said, hey, Dad, this is what we're going to do. And we used all that money, and we were able to take that money, get through the first harvest. Whatever funds we had left, we just propelled it to the next one. So we were very hand to mouth, and we were able to do that because we didn't take a salary for 6-7 years. And then we had a lot of family and friends who helped donate their time. And, we'd cook them meals, give them a little something on the side, whatever you needed. And that helped us get to where we are. And now you see our farm today where we have these beautiful greenhouses. We have a, beautiful fence, a great security system. It wasn't always like that. We started with plants in the ground, and now we have them actually in bags with soil. And it was definitely building on the way up. If we were to start over, would I have liked to do it like that? Yes. And here's why. We've learned so much about each other, because that was by far the most challenging thing you could ever possibly do. Farming tests your soul, it tests your spirit, and it tests your inner being. And to be able to grow something with your hands, not knowing what the weather's going to be like, the rain, humidity, all these different factors that come into that, and then to be successful, is like one of the greatest achievements, probably besides being a single parent, you could possibly do in life.
Way up high, 1,000 miles, the skies above the red. The daffodils are turning on their heads like Mama said. On my back, I float away to places I once was.
Speaking of your friends and family and it testing your soul, the thing that strikes me the most about your branding and your company is the playful nature of your brand's personality, which is not something that I often see around cannabis brands. There's a very high-tech feeling, but there's also a very playful and futuristic feeling.
Right.
What was the inspiration for approaching your branding that way?
Being ourselves. The thing is that we know that we're staying in our lane. Our lane is Black-owned and operated, a family. We embrace it. We love it. We don't shy away from that. I think people can see through authenticity. They can see realness. They can see us at the farm actually growing people's cannabis, trimming it, and giving it to them. And we're very transparent about that, because I feel like people, they are yearning for something like that, because there is this large I don't want to say cloud, but like curtain over the cannabis industry where you're like, okay, where is it coming from? How is it grown? Does it have pesticides in it? What type of soil did you use? Your pH? Millennials are very smart. They want to know a lot about who's growing their stuff. What does it look like? How is it going to affect me? We're always trying to get more information to make those, very particular decisions based on how we consume cannabis. So, we're just us. We're just trying to be the Hollingsworth family. So it's who we are every day.
I was watching some of the videos, and I loved hearing you and your brother, and I loved hearing your laughter. I mean, I just thought that just really lifted my spirit, especially because, like I said earlier, cannabis to me is a little bit, confusing. But you have so much confidence with this work. How did you get this? I mean, did you grow up? I mean, you're talking about touching the soil and growing things with your hands. And
right.
Was this an experience that you've had that you didn't know about until later in life? Because I'm looking at your bio, of course, and you played professional basketball in Athens.
Yeah, that was fun.
I mean, like, you're talking about seeds and, pesticides.
Right.
Where did this love of nature come from?
It was forced on me. Look, when Raph said he wanted, it was forced. I'm telling you, when Raph, and I'm a quick learner. Look, when Raph said he wanted to do this, right, it felt like this whole time, the last 6-7 years have felt like we were pushed off a cliff and building a plane on the way down. That's what it's felt like. Didn't know how to drive a plane or fly a plane. Don't know where the cockpit is. Don't know anything. And we've just figured stuff out. But on the flip side of that, is that I feel like, and this might sound weird because some people, they think cannabis is drugs, and God's been on our side since day one. Like we are standing on our ancestors' shoulders. They have walked with us for the entire time that we're doing this. And I think a large part of it is because we're very self-conscious about how we treat people, how we connect with people and building relationships, and then also really big on giving back to the community because those are the people that lift us up. There's not a moment in time where I can see someone and they're like, yo, like, we just love what you're doing, or we connect with you, or we mess with you, girl, like, we just love what you're doing. So yeah, it was, we figured it out. I now I love growing. I love making stuff. I love all that.
So how have you taken the company on the marketing side to another level? Because I definitely can hear your passion, and you're an amazing communicator. How have you been able to transform the company from, building the plane as you're flying down
on the way
cliff?
down? Well,
right.
Coming from you guys have amazing branding. The Honest Phil God. I'm looking at your logo. It's dope. We're just trying to compete. We know that your branding, your social media, we know that means something. People, that's like the front porch of your company. People see that first, and then they can tell, well, what's going on in the house. And so we wanted to make sure that when people see our front porch, which is our social media, that they see some good stuff. And that's like just honest pictures of our family. And, when we first started, we were kind of nervous to come out to show people that we were Black owned because there was nobody like us at the time in terms of the recreational legal market. So we were scared. We said, should we? And then finally we just embraced it, and we're unapologetically Black. That's just the angle that we're going. People have been very receptive to that. And, we embrace that, and that's how we continue with our branding.
With your business in the state of Washington, do you think that this experience is translatable to other states? And I think specifically Illinois, because in Illinois, January 1st, cannabis is going to be legal, but women don't have a license in Illinois. They're not part of that, initial 10, and they're really trying to lobby right now to get a license. And African Americans are also working really hard to try to get a license. Do you think that you'd be able to translate this to Illinois, or would you be able to use your expertise to advise people in Illinois? I mean, what does this look like? Because I feel like I want you in Illinois.
Oh,
I want your company there because we need Black people doing this in our state.
Right. Let me just say this. We knew that our farm was the proof of concept. Think about this. If we can grow in Washington State, where we're fighting humidity, we're fighting rain, We're fighting a whole bunch of climate stuff that's going on up here. And we chose to grow in a greenhouse. Some people grow indoors. We wanted to go the greenhouse route primarily because we couldn't afford to be in a warehouse. That was like the biggest thing. And then the second thing was that we're very conscious about having a low carbon footprint. So we wanted to farm and be outside. But we feel like we could take this business model and put this in any state in the country and be successful because we're able to grow for such a low price per gram and be able to transfer that and be sustainable, but also be successful. So yeah, of course we'd love to be outside the state of Washington, but we're just trying to figure out what that looks like and who to partner with to be able to bring Black folks to different industries. We know a lot of people are doing great work, like Can Inclusive. They're trying to get people into the industry. Viola Cannabis, they're doing a great job. They're Black owned and operated and getting out there. And Gas House, they're doing a great job. We're just trying to find our niche and help people as well.
What lessons can you share with Black owned small businesses about carving out their own lane?
Be yourself. Don't shy away from your Blackness. Don't shy away from your honesty and treat people well. I think the biggest thing that I've seen the last 6 years is we've only been able to be successful because of the relationships that we've had and that we've created with people and connection and staying in touch and handwritten notes and checking in on people. Like people are craving relationships. And so finding your niche, making sure that you treat people the way you want to be treated, and then also just being unapologetically Black, being yourself, and just making sure that you stay in that lane and do that really, really well. And that's the three biggest things I can think of right now.
Speaking of connections, I have to know how you met the legend Anthony Bourdain. How did that introduction happen?
Crazy. Okay, so look, their production company hit us up on Facebook. We did not respond because we didn't know what was going on because they didn't say who they were. So we were just like, okay, here's some people, we don't know. Well, finally, after a month goes by, then they finally call the office. We respond back and they say, hey, they didn't say who they were. And they kept saying, Tony, we wanted you to have dinner with Tony. And, we were going to do a Seattle series. And we're like, what are you talking about? Who's Tony? We don't know a Tony. So anyways, they said, hey, we want to come out to your farm to see it. The producers come out. They take an Uber to the farm, okay, from Seattle all the way to Sheldon. That's 90 minutes. They're
light flex.
Yo, and we're like, yo, you guys showed up in an Uber? Uber driver comes out. He was like, yo, where am I? What's going on? We're like, hey, surprise. They don't get cell service because it's very spotty. And they walk in and you see a field of green because we have all the greenhouses lined up and we have the sides rolled up. So all you can see are plants and flowers. And they said, okay, we're coming back here. And we're like, well, who's coming back here? He was like, Parts Unknown with Anthony Bourdain. And my brother was like, no effing way. And he was like, no, we're going to come back here. This is the director, Nick, and then the producer, Helen. And we just said, okay. We still didn't believe it. And then finally they sent us a date to show up at this restaurant in Seattle. And Mamnoon, shout out to Mamnoon, they're a Lebanese place. They're family owned and operated. They're amazing food. We went to the restaurant. He shows up. We're like still kind of in shock and awe. And it was an amazing experience. He smoked a ton of our weed. He was super lit at the table. Raph was a little tipsy. I was the only one who didn't do anything because I said, hey, I ain't going to be like that. And it was cool.
Someone has to keep the coherent conversation going.
You got to.
Wow, that is amazing. They just found you, and I'm sure that your presentation, your branding, and your consistency has a lot to do with that.
And I think that what's great about this story, a lot of us have trouble making those high-level connections like that.
Right.
And if we do, and when we do, some of us are ready and some of us aren't. But you all were ready for it. I mean, you were completely ready for that kind of an opportunity, which I think is a lesson for all of us that you just have to keep going forward because, you talking about building the plane as you're, trying to learn to fly it, but still you maintained your integrity around it, your experience, your professionality, your branding was strong. So I think that those are lessons that we all need to keep in mind. All entrepreneurs need to keep those kinds of things in mind because I think that a lot of times we're so busy in the business that we forget about the things that you said earlier, the networking, the presentation on the outside, your branding. So that was just really beautiful. I feel like we could have another long conversation around.
We need to.
We should, because we really need to talk about.
done.
We need to talk about Black self-determination. We need to talk about the prison complex. We need to talk about
that farm.
I mean, like farming. Your ancestors were slaves. Now you're farming again, and it's an industry you're in the right place at the right time, because personally, I think you guys are heading towards billionaire status. Keep it going. Let's do it.
Gosh.
Can we manifest?
We can manifest it. We're blessed, and hopefully we get to a certain level where we can be successful and give back to the community, but also inspire other people to get into the industry.
Wow, this has been an amazing conversation. Thank you so much, Joy, for sharing all of your stories and your knowledge and being so authentically Black and authentically yourself and sharing your family story. This is an amazing facility. We can't wait to see your farm. I'm Esther.
I'm JinJa.
I'm Joy.
And this is The Honest Field Guide. We'll talk to you next time. The Honest Field Guide podcast is produced by Birk Creative, written and created by JinJa Birkenbeuel and Esther Ikoro. The podcast is recorded in the innovation and technology capital of the Midwest, Chicago.
Original music is written by and provided courtesy of Utah Carol. Follow Honest Field Guide on Instagram and Twitter. The opinions expressed on the Honest Field Guide are opinions only and only represent the views of JinJa Birkenbeuel and Esther Ikoro.